Hey there, what's happening? Back in my drum studio as always. Just getting ready to do some practicing. Before I do that though, I want to make some lunch and or breakfast. I had a smoothie earlier, but the other day I went to the grocery store and they were out of a lot of my staples. They didn't have oats, which I typically eat in the morning. They didn't have rice. They didn't have a lot of the beans that I like to get. They didn't have potatoes. So anyway, that's a huge chunk of my diet. I mean, the diet that I follow is very close to what plant-based doctors such as Dr. McDougall or Caldwell Esselstyn advocate for, which is like a high-starch, low-fat diet, primarily with whole food starches. So yeah, those ingredients that I mentioned, like oats and potatoes and beans and brown rice and quinoa and things like that. But occasionally I'll eat white rice, and I'll eat, in this case, grits, which grits are corn, which is another starch too, and but it's not in a whole food form. And I don't think that's always such a bad thing, especially if you're exercising a lot, you know, and or maybe you're even transitioning to this diet, and then all of a sudden you get somebody like myself or some of the plant-based doctors that will really kind of have a very specific diet in mind and not have as many loose boundaries. And what I'm trying to advocate for is to have some of those loose boundaries, especially when you're having to roll with the punches like we all are with this pandemic, and you can't have access to everything that you want. I don't think it's the end of the world to eat something like grits or white rice. So I just want to throw that out there. Again, you know, I'm not obviously an expert. I'm a drummer, but you know, I get my biomarkers tested every year, and everything's looking good as far as my blood work and everything like that goes. So anyway. Also, not to mention, another thing to mention is that grits and something along the lines like this, I think it's called ugali, which is the staple of Kenyan runners. And so these people are known for being world-class athletes. They win a lot of Olympic medals, and their diet is primarily a refined corn product called ugali, which is similar to grits, or like kind of like a rice cake, but it's made out of a refined corn product. So they're eating a lot of that. They're eating a lot of fruit, vegetables, and that's the bulk of their diet, and they're out there kicking ass. So anyway, I kind of look to examples like that of larger populations who maintain excellent health, and you look closely at their dietary staples, and yeah, they're a lot of times they're just a starch-based diet. So I mean, that is really key. Starch, fruit, vegetables. Keep the nuts and seeds low, include them in your diet, keep the avocados, things like that, low. Again, like include them in your diet unless you have a really bad case of heart disease, then maybe you want to stick to some of those programs that Dean Ornish or Caldwell Esselstyn will advocate for, because they've scientifically proven that they can reverse and stop heart disease in a lot of cases with this sort of a diet. So anyway, again, I'm a drummer. I'm not a doctor. I've mentioned a lot of names. By all means, go ahead and do some research on your own. I really encourage that. You can argue with me as well in the comments if you have a disagreement. That's totally cool, and I'm open to it. So anyway, without further ado, I'm kind of a noob when it comes to making grits, but I make them similar to oatmeal, so I'll show you what I do. All right, one moment. All right, so we're back here, and we're just going to use my really cheap rice cooker on this one. I mean, you could probably do this in the Instant Pot as well, but I'm just going to make it in the rice cooker. It's pretty simple. So, all right. Again, I don't really measure anything, but I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that I'm gonna put in about 3/4 of a cup of the grits, and this really expands when you add water, so a little goes a long way. So all right, so here's I'll just bring this over here. We'll do about that much. So yeah, maybe that's a cup, 3/4 of a cup. Again, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal if you go over or under. This is not rocket science, and you have loose guidelines when it comes to this stuff. So, all right, next I'm going to add maybe a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of cinnamon. So we'll just go ahead and put that in there. And again, a lot of times, I mean, this is not a traditional grits recipe, by the way. So, but I'm not a traditional guy. Okay, whatever. That was bad. Okay, little attempt at humor. And all right, so next we're gonna add some water. All right, so we'll just see if this is enough. And yeah, you wanna don't be afraid to add quite a bit of water to it. Maybe double the amount at least, or even just a touch more than what you added of the cornmeal, or the grits. Anyway, then just flip it on, and oh wait, forgot one thing. I like to add the bananas in while the grits are cooking. You can do it afterwards too, it doesn't matter, it's up to you. So we'll go ahead and chop these up. And here I am, I'm just going to talk to you. So yeah, this is a really good way to get a lot of quick energy and have a really satisfying meal, before you're going to go work out, or if you're finishing working out, or if you're finishing drumming. This is a really good one. It's really simple too, it's super cheap. I mean, it's bananas and corn. I mean, how cheap is that? So, eat a decent amount too. Really, kind of eat enough so that you feel full. Anyway, so we'll let that hang out for a bit. And the key on this is to stir it. So as it starts to warm up, you're going to want to stir it a bunch because it will really clump to the bottom and then stick. So that's not good. Unlike the oatmeal, the oatmeal you can pretty much set it and forget it. But with the grits, you got to stir it, okay? So I'm just throwing that out there. And I'll come back in a moment because this will take maybe like 3 or 4 minutes to warm up. All right, so it's starting to warm up a little bit, so we're going to stir this around. You can see the cinnamon rising to the top there. And all right, and I'll come back in a moment. So we're going to stir that every minute or two, and it should take, it says about 5 minutes on the instructions on the package, but I think that's when it starts to come to like a simmer. So you want to let it simmer, and then once it's simmering a little bit, stir it around, and then leave it at the end covered for about like 2 or 3 more minutes so that it continues to cook, but is also cooling down a little bit. All right, we're gonna check on it some more. You can see how the grits are starting to absorb the water. It'll still be a few more minutes though. All right, so it started simmering a little bit, so I'm going to stir it around, give it a little quick stir right there. And yeah, you don't want it to come to a roaring boil or anything. Just, make sure that there's some bubbles popping up like there is right here, and it's steaming a little bit. That's about as hot as you want to get it. So you can even power down at this point. And I think it's it will continue to cook, so just maybe let it hang out. I'll just put the lid back on. Let it hang out for maybe like 3 to 5 minutes like that. So the power's off. I already turned it off, just so you know. So yeah, don't let it come to a roaring boil. If the power doesn't come off on your rice cooker automatically, just let it hang out. And then this will be good to eat in about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. In about 5 minutes, I might take the dish out of the rice cooker so that the heat from the bottom isn't continuing to cook it, and it can cool off even further. But yeah, it just needs this time to rest so that the grits can really come into their true form. So, all right, cool. Okay, so I'm just allowing the the rice cooker to cool down a little bit so that we can eat these grits. Um, some things that you can add to it are maybe like frozen berries, and that's actually a good move, because if you add some frozen berries at the very end, it'll help it bring it to temperature that you can start eating it. Um, you can add dates, you could add some ground flax or walnuts. You know, just treat it like oatmeal, essentially. If you need it to be a little bit sweeter, a little bit of brown sugar, or I sometimes I have these Florida crystals, which is basically raw cane sugar. That's vegan, by the way. I eat that sometimes. And you're asking, maybe sugar is not vegan. In some refined sugar products, they use bone char. So actually, the kind of sugar that I use, it actually says it does not include bone char. They use it in sort of the aesthetic bleaching process or something like that of refined sugar. So that's just a little tidbit in case you wanted to know. So yeah, I don't eat the white sugar that has that bone char. So I make sure that if I'm having any sort of sweeteners like that, which I rarely do, to be perfectly honest, I don't usually try to eat a lot of refined sugar, but occasionally, you know, if you want something a little bit sweeter, it's nice to have. And again, if you are exercising quite a bit and you're drumming and you need that quick energy, it's really good to get it from natural sources, and sugar is a natural source. So if you're eating raw sugar. So yeah, I think that that's okay. Just, you know, don't be eating it all the time, because again, it's a refined product. So it's lacking the fiber and the rest of the nutrients that would happen if you were to eat just pure sugar cane. So, which I don't know if many people do, but I know that people will juice it. Anyway, so we'll let this hang out for a little bit longer. Those are a few options that you can do to this, but I want this recipe, in all of my recipes, to be simple, to be affordable, to be something that you can make easily in a rice cooker or in an Instant Pot or in a blender, you know, an appliance that you could bring on tour with you. Or if you're traveling, you don't have to be in a band. If you're just traveling and you don't want to eat at restaurants, or maybe you're trying to save money, I mean, these are good options. You can just eat this while you're at home too. And I never get tired of eating a lot of these simple recipes. And I can certainly make some more advanced ones too. So I think I'm going to make maybe like black bean soup next. So that one's going to be pretty good. And all right, so we'll hang out a little bit longer and I'll show you the results, what it should look like at the end, but it's going to take a minute or two longer. So the grits have hung out for a bit. They've been cooling down, and you can see it's a lot thicker now. So I'm just stirring it because there's still some water on the top. But this is the texture that you're looking for. And you know, you kind of have to get the stuff from the bottom up. But yeah, you can eat it just like this, just plain simple grits with some bananas, a little bit of cinnamon, and that's going to taste really good on its own. And again, if you want to add some stuff, you know, throw in some frozen berries at this point, or chop up some dates or raisins, or if you need it a little bit sweeter, then yeah, add a little bit of some sort of sweetener that you're into. I prefer raw cane sugar. So anyway, enjoy, and I'll see you next time.